Tracked mediations now that 2024 is done. I tracked all the mediations that I did, and 93% of the ones that were pro se, meaning that there were no attorneys involved, at least not in the mediation session, came to a full agreement. And if there was at least one attorney in the mediation, that drops down to 25%. If there's an attorney involved, they are very used to, again, I'm going to say this is what we're used to. They're used to being caucused, so they're broken off. And I think people forget that their attorney is there for a very short period of time. They're not really specialized in developing parenting plans unless they also have some sort of education.
There's a metaphor I want to throw to you as I think about it is when you go to mediation compared to when you go to, say, court, right? So in court, you just think of a restaurant, and a restaurant, if you go into court, it's a very limited menu, right? Because the court is more cookie cutter, right? And then if you're in mediation, think of it as the menu is huge, right? Like, because you're more in control. That's what I've heard from others as well. I don't know if you agree with that metaphor or like it.
I absolutely agree with it, and I tell people that all the time. Sometimes they'll ask me during mediation, well, what do we do with our house? And I say, well, what do you want to do with your house? It's up to you.
Welcome to the Just Separated podcast. Hi, I'm Karen Oman, a thanatologist, grief counselor, divorce strategist, and co-author of the Just Separated workbook. I draw on years of personal and professional experience to guide you through the challenges of your divorce. Together, with our expert guests, we'll equip you with the clarity, resilience, and tools to take charge and move forward with confidence. Follow Just Separated and join us as we explore the many different facets of divorce.
Hi, welcome to the Just Separated podcast. I'm your host, Karen Oman, and co-founder of the Divorce Workshop. Today, we are talking about family litigation alternatives with our expert guest, Elyse Salley. Elyse is a licensed and board-certified behavior analyst, Florida Supreme Court family mediator, guardian ad litem, and parenting coordinator who has dedicated over 10 years of serving children and families in Florida. She holds a Bachelor of Science in Psychology, a Master's of Art in Exceptional Education and Applied Behavioral Analysis, and is currently pursuing her Master's of Social Work. Elyse founded Serenity Family Transitions on the principle of effective communication and conflict resolution skills. In a field dominated by litigation, Serenity Family Solutions strives to provide alternatives that are better suited to children and families. Welcome, Elyse, to the Just Separated podcast.
Thank you, Karen. Happy to be here.
So I'm going to start this conversation by saying that over 7 years ago, when I separated, I did what society told me to do. I went right to a lawyer, and I didn't understand the cost. I didn't understand anything. I just said, I know I needed a lawyer. And we're not talking, Elyse, like this was decades ago. This was only 7 years ago. So my first question is why do you think that family litigation still to this day is such a strong hold in divorce?
Well, there are a lot of factors in it. I think one of them is that anything that happens in the country, we get very used to. So think about attorneys and what is their reinforcer. Think about how much attorneys charge and what they get. And they get more money to extend the case. They get more money if a case is contentious. And money is a big reinforcer. It's a secondary reinforcer because it enables us to come into contact with our primary reinforcers. So with money, we can get food and shelter and comfort and anything else that we like. So that's a very, very big reinforcer. I do think that's a big portion of it, is that attorneys and judicial staff are comfortable in the way things work, and they have been working like this for a very long time. And it's systemic. I mean, it's the entire nation. I don't know if it's other countries too, but we're a very litigious nation, and a lot of people are very comfortable in that.
Do you think there's also, I remember when I talked to you like a while back that you talked about, you see signs of fight for you. And do you think there's a component of that where it's like you feel that, there's a a fear thing there where you're like, okay, I need to fight this, like, and
Yes,
so we see it on billboards. So do you think there's that component that they play on that as well as for the divorcing people?
I do. I absolutely do. And just the fact that when someone is served with a court case, if they do it straight through the court, which means they're not hiring a private process server, a sheriff or someone in the police force is coming to your door or finding you out in public or at your job and serving you with documents, fully uniformed sheriff, gun, and everything. So it's not an amicable start to a divorce, and people are more likely to have that knee jerk reaction to want to protect themselves and then to also want to fight back. So that's just how things start. And that's not a very good start, at least not in my opinion. We do a lot of uncontested, and it's much nicer.
How long has, like, I know that there's countries and states and provinces that are all doing more mediation. Do you know how has this been, like, the mediation drive or push? Do you know how long, when did that kind of start?
I don't know. I should probably look that up though, so I can just know it and talk about it. I do know that we are pretty decent with it in Florida, especially in some of the more urban areas and some of the rural areas. They don't have mediation programs, but most of the ones in Florida that are cities and near cities do have mediation programs. So we're pretty good about it. We have a pretty good system of how we are able to certify mediators and also train mediators. And then once we've gotten our training, then when other people are being trained, we have to say yes to them if they want to observe in order to get their training. So there definitely are some good things in place.
So would you say, so if we're going to talk about the benefits and cons and pros of each, I mean, what are some of the reasons that that people should really, really look into mediation? Cost aside. Cost, Elyse, is like night and day, right? But is there any other reasons?
Absolutely. There's a time component. So on average, oh, also, so let me just say that I've tracked mediations now that 2024 is done. I tracked all the mediations that I did, and 93% of the ones that were pro se, meaning that there were no attorneys involved, at least not in the mediation session, came to a full agreement. And if there was at least one attorney in the mediation, that drops down to 25% for 2024. I'm going to continue to track it every year. Other years, I want to take in other mediators' numbers just to see how it is across the board. But I think one reason as to why it's so successful when it's pro se is because people are in a joint room and they're thinking about the mediator, at least I do. I keep trying to get them back on track about let's move forward. How do we work from here? How is it going to look 10, 15 years down the road, depending on how old your child is or, what's going in place. If there's an attorney involved, they are very used to, again, I'm going to say this is what we're used to. They're used to being caucused. So they're broken off. They're in a separate room with their client. This attorney's in a separate room with their client. And then all of a sudden you have that mindset of my attorney is my teammate, my co-parent or my spouse is my enemy. And so that's really not a successful way to go about it. And I think people forget that their attorney is there for a very short period of time. They're not really specialized in developing parenting plans unless they also have some sort of education. And they're not going to be the one co-parenting with you. So once this mediation is done and your case is done, that attorney's gone. It's your co-parent or your spouse that you have to keep going about this with. That's a very important thing to remember that I don't think people think about.
Yeah, and think about, you've already set up an adversarial relationship that was probably, you're getting divorced for reasons, right? So the communication's already probably broken down or whatever. There's been betrayals, whatever. So they've just heightened those emotions more.
Right.
And now, as you said, the lawyer's left, both of them, and you're left to co-parent for a long time.
Right.
With really
with a
raw
plan that you may or may not like and may or may not work for your family.
and really raw emotions, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that too. So another thing that I've started doing in mediations, especially when people have young children, is I'm not so much suggest, but I say I have seen people do this in the past, and this can be a good thing for the benefit of your child. Because obviously, I'm not giving any legal advice. I'm not an attorney, but I do have this wealth of information when it comes to child rearing. So I can say, your child's 2 years old. It's really hard to think about a parenting plan that's going to last 16 years right now on the spot. So it could be beneficial to come back when your child starts elementary school, when they start middle school, if someone's going to move. And then a lot of people that I work with want to have a mediation clause that says they have to go back to mediation at least once if they have some sort of disagreement that they can't fix on their own before they can relitigate. So I think that's a really beneficial clause.
That's a great clause. I've never heard of that before. And you think of the money that it saves, right? To go back to you for a session or go
Yeah, or
back to
anywhere. It
court.
doesn't have to be me. It's just
Hmm.
any mediator. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great. So we talked about, so then co-parenting plans would be beneficial with mediation compared
Hmm.
to litigation, especially the court system, right?
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
I,
I was thinking I may start in the parenting plan portion of mediations if there are attorneys involved to have them maybe in a breakout room or in a separate room during that time to just work with the parents for the parenting plan. Obviously, we're going to come back to the attorneys for equitable distribution, and they'll be able to view everything in the parenting plan and sign off and say if they want changes. But I'm wondering if that will start to change some of the success rates to have the attorneys separate for the parenting plan.
that's interesting.
Yeah.
Um, there's a metaphor I want to throw to you as I think about it is um, when you go to mediation compared to when you go to say court, right? So in
Mhm.
court, you just think of a restaurant, and a restaurant, if you're going to court, it's a very limited menu, right?
Mhm.
Because the court is more cookie cutter, right? And then if you're
Yep.
in mediation, think of it as the menu is huge, right? Like, because
Yep.
you're more in control. That's what I've heard from others as well. I don't know if you agree with that metaphor or
I
like it or.
do. I absolutely agree with it, and I tell people that all the time. Sometimes they'll ask me during mediation, "Well, what do we do with our house?" And I say, "Well, what do you want to do with your house? It's up to you. The only thing that's a legal obligation, at least in Florida, that's difficult to change is child support. But everything else is going to be 100% negotiable."
Yeah, and that gives kind of more control to the couple rather
Hmm.
than the court system.
Yes,
Right.
absolutely. It's just
So,
wonderful. I mean, there's nothing bad that I could say about mediation.
are there certain um, couples that are not fit for mediation?
Yes, there are. If there is a history of or ongoing domestic violence, and the person who is the target of that violence is uncomfortable with doing mediation with the person that was engaging in the violence, then that would not be appropriate. There are things that we can do to make it safer and more comfortable if the person is willing to try it, but of course, that's totally up to them. So, a lot of them will do on Zoom, and if they have the right to caucus, they can be in a separate room from their other party. And I've also done hybrid mediations where one person, usually if there's been domestic violence, the target will come into the office with me, and then the other person will be on Zoom. So there's ways to make it work, but of course it's up to the person's comfort level.
It's an important point, right? Do you have shuttle mediation? Is that,
Shuttle?
yeah,
No, I don't know what that
where,
is.
well, I think it's almost the same that you were talking about, like the mediator goes between the two so they don't have to
Oh
face each
yes,
other.
yes, I do that. Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
So that's what when I say caucus, that's what I mean is that
Hmm.
they're allowed to be in separate rooms, and then I go back and forth, whether it's Zoom breakout rooms or in the office.
So if someone is hesitant about mediation, because as I said, like this is 7 years ago, I didn't even know mediation existed. So it is making it is coming. We have it in Canada, you have it there. I think in Europe, it's really becoming quite more popular. But if they're hesitant about mediation, what would you say to them?
I send out a cute little email beforehand and it has a picture of like a toddler that says, "You got this." I don't know. It was a meme from a long time ago. And just some tips and tricks about mediation. I really want my mediations to be comfortable. So I tell people, wear whatever you want to be comfortable. If they're coming into the office, I have food and drinks, and I will kind of push for breaks. Some people don't want a break and they just want to get through it, but sometimes I'll push for at least a mental break. If they're at home, I tell them, take as many breaks as you need, eat, have your basic needs be met, because I don't want people coming to an agreement on something just because they're uncomfortable and they want to leave. So I also tell people, you can mediate as many times as you want. You don't have to finish at a certain time. You can come back. I don't like to have people go over 3 hours, because at that point, I feel like people are starting to get uncomfortable, because I know I'm starting to get uncomfortable just sitting and listening for that long. So I imagine that they are too. But I usually most people do about 2 hour blocks with me, sometimes to three. And then if we don't finish everything, they come back as many times as they need. Sometimes they take months between.
I
It's
guess
just
as
really meant to be
I guess for
controlled
you
by
it's
people.
sorry, Elyse. I guess it as
Mhm.
long as we're moving forward in these like baby steps even are okay in mediation.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
Right. Yeah.
Like it doesn't always have to be these big, decisions. Like, what are the
No,
biggest
it
problems?
doesn't.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt again, but what are the biggest problems that you see that like or like couples face in mediation? Like, is there a couple things that you see that happened a lot? Like,
I think during mediation, I don't see a continual problem during mediation, but what I do see most often, because we do so many uncontested divorces and paternity cases, is that one person hasn't even told their spouse yet. And so then they're asking us to tell them, or they're asking us for advice on how to tell them, or they're asking for some sort of pre-mediation mediation where they're there to tell them that they want to go to mediation. So that's a thing that I notice pretty often.
so what I hear you're saying is that people want to mediate, but they haven't told their spouse they want to mediate.
Right? Sometimes they haven't even told them that they want a divorce yet. If they haven't even told them about the divorce, then I refer them to a marital counselor that we have right down the road. And I will let him know, hey, this isn't a marriage counseling session. They just want to they want to be able to talk about the divorce in a safe space.
That's a pretty healthy thing, though, actually, when I think about
Absolutely.
it, right? Because
Yeah.
then, and I'd love to have it back on because we can talk more about the kids. But for the kids' sake, that's the couple is starting to learn how to detach
Hmm.
healthy instead of. I mean, we know the consequences on children, but so okay, I didn't know that that happens.
Yeah, it does. I had someone ask to do one of those this weekend.
Hmm. Wow. So if
Yep.
you if anyone's listening and they're in like say they're deep in litigation, right? Like
Hmm.
and they're going nowhere because that I hear with clients as well. They're going nowhere. It's just the
Right.
court systems everywhere are backlogged. Can they go into mediation?
Absolutely. We have people come into that as well. Sometimes they will be unhappy with the speed of their case, or maybe they don't feel like they're on the same page as their attorney. They can go find a private mediator and mediate if they're both willing to do it. If one person isn't willing to do it, we can't force someone to mediate. Okay, so that's going to be the second thing that I say that comes up pretty often, is that one person doesn't want to mediate, and then the person keeps trying to push us to get the other person to mediate, and I say we can't. It's not court ordered. If those people that are deep in litigation have a court order that says they have to mediate by a certain date, then yes, they're going to need to mediate. If they're both unhappy with how their case is going, they can pull back from that, pause their litigation, and go mediate and have their attorneys or not. I have a case coming in a week and a half like that right now, where it was the parties themselves who found me and said, we're not happy with how our case is going. We want to do a mediation with you.
So we're
If they agree to everything in mediation, then their case is pretty much done. So that's really exciting.
So would you recommend then for people that are exploring or in the beginning of a divorce to actually start with a mediator rather than
Yeah.
going to lawyers?
Yes,
Yeah.
I would. Unless it is some sort of emergency motion, then that I think should go to judges, which I think is supposed to go to them within 24 to 48 hours anyway. If it is just a regular split and it's not an emergency, then I think mediation should be done first. I honestly
Because
think it should be mandated first.
yeah, I think that's happening in the UK. I'm not 100% sure, but I think it's happening. So you can at least try to get some negotiations through,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like at least attempt that.
Yeah. Yeah, because you can have partial agreements.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the advice I've heard before too is also that if you're going to do mediation, you should try to prepare yourself for it because it's different than litigation. Is that correct?
It is different because the mediator is not imposing any sort of decision onto the parties. We're not a judge and we're not going to tell them what to do. The most I will do is tell people what I have seen other people do. Like if they just have honestly no idea what to do with an account or a house, I can tell them these are the professionals you can talk to talk about that. Sometimes we'll even get one of those professionals on the phone during the mediation and they'll give a consultation right then and there. And if they're not interested in that, then I can tell people, well, this is what I've seen other people do. If you brought it to the court, this is what would most likely happen because this is what the law is. But really, it's up to the two of them.
Yeah. So how many? What's it? You had mentioned that it's a like 93% success rate.
In my mediations in
Yeah.
2024, it was 93% full agreement if there were not attorneys in the mediation.
Which is really telling though on how mediation is so much better for the couple and the children.
Yes. Yeah, so most divorces go to finish in mediation here anyway, and I think the statistic in Florida is similar to about 93, it's 90-ish percent of cases settle in mediation. So even if you're doing all of that stress and time doing litigation, you're still going to be mandated to go to mediation by the judge before they'll allow you to have a trial. And most people settle there.
Hmm. Do you think it's because? So do you think it goes back to my first question? Is why, if you think about it, are lawyers a bit worried that mediation might become more popular and easier, or like is that like because it
I
is so
don't.
much beneficial for the family and I
Mhm.
find that the court systems, granted they're needed for some, of course, but it kind of, it's the old saying, do you want to put your own kids through college or do you want to put the lawyers through college? And we were
Right,
talking about families that are being, like, I've seen them, they've been destroyed, right? Like financially and emotionally and children's problems. I mean, and it's systemic, right? Like, so,
right.
um, do you think there's an awareness of the actual costs in a holistic way about this?
I don't think there's a huge awareness, no. I really don't think there's much awareness at all because people will call me and think that we're attorneys and say, I'm getting divorced, I need an attorney. And I think there was one guy who called the other day. I was doing a consultation and I don't remember what he said first. I don't remember who said it first, but he said, I don't like attorneys. And I said, well, I'm not an attorney, so I'm not offended at all. And he said, oh, good, good, but I'm getting divorced. I need an attorney. And I said, no, you don't. So that's a huge misconception.
Yeah, it's everywhere. I think, Elise, that, and I think for my own case, to be honest, I think I did it in fear because I thought, well, I need the lawyer, right? I
Mm-hmm.
never, and I would have been much better, even in my situation, to have at least started with the mediation, um,
Mm-hmm.
emotionally and cost alone, right?
Right. Yeah, I mean, I can't speak on behalf of attorneys, obviously, especially for just other people in general. I can't speak on their behalf, but I know that as a field, they are a fierce advocate for their one client. Where my mindset is as the mediator, that I'm advocating for the overall well being of that family unit.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where it's important if, also I want to mention that like you're a mediator, have, make sure you interview and consult the mediators too, right? Like that one that fits for you.
Right. Yeah, because we're different. We all have different backgrounds.
Yeah. It makes sense. Right. And so, also, so would you say interview 3 or 2 or whatever? Just make sure you shop around.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. Is there anything that like anything that we've forgotten to talk about today about this topic before we wrap up?
I don't think so. I mean, did I go in depth and tell you that I am doing a risk assessment for everyone who schedules a mediation now?
No, I
I
think that
didn't
would
do
be,
that. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, because I actually had something happen. So I've had to change what I do as far as Zoom mediations because we had something a little scary happen where there was a homicide attempt after a mediation. I don't know if it had anything to do with the mediation, but the person didn't have their camera on during it, and the attorney wasn't there for the second mediation session. So I wasn't able to get any body language. This is just me as the mediator. I like to have some body language, even if it's just on Zoom. So I had to make that a rule now where anyone who's coming in virtually has to have their camera on the whole time unless they're obviously taking a break. And now everyone who comes through is getting a risk assessment, and that's for suicide, homicide, um, domestic violence, and what their support system is. So I view that for everyone, and I kind of am able to help them better, I would hope, based on that.
Yeah, so if you're interviewing mediators, you may want to make sure that they have what you have in place,
Right.
right? Especially if
Yeah.
you're in a riskier situation with domestic
Mhm.
violence,
Right.
right?
Yeah, definitely look at your mediator's background because they're mainly either going to be attorneys or someone in the mental health space. They can be other people, but those are the two that you're most likely to see.
Yeah, that's a really important thing you brought up there because there are situations like that.
Mhm.
And
Yep, a lot.
intimidation, a lot. Yeah, a lot more than I think most people who are listening would actually understand.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep.
So before we wrap up, I always ask the same question to every guest. And so for someone who is just separated, whether they left or were left, what advice would you give them to help them navigate those overwhelming early days?
I have a story for my answer. It's a story about a consultation that I just did. It doesn't have to do with just being left, but the message is going to be the same. It was a woman who was coming to us, and she came to me directly because she found me through a Facebook post where I was recommended. And she asked if I could help her terminate her parental rights. And this was mainly by text. We haven't had a video consultation yet. And I needed to know some more information about it. Just I myself wanted to know some more information as to why she wanted to terminate her rights. And I found out that her son has a developmental disability. She's remarried, father's remarried, and she was sending some messages from the father and some videos where the father is just saying pages and pages about you're the reason that our son is having issues. He has this problem and he needs structure and he can have more structure here. Just let him be here all the time. I'm going to homeschool him. My wife is willing to adopt him, etc., etc. And I found out that the mother has low self-esteem, and obviously she's hearing those things over and over and over. If those two things are happening, then you're way more likely to start to think those things about yourself. So she had totally lost her self-esteem in just thinking that she wasn't able to be a mother anymore. And when I found that out, I was able to refer her to individual counseling, family counseling, co-parenting counseling if they can get on board with it, parenting coordination, behavior analysis for the child. And she was able to get counseling that weekend. She started counseling this week. She found a counselor for her son and told me that she's not going to terminate her rights now. And she's feeling better about herself as a mother. So that is a very specific story for my overall message is to remember that you are a good person and that you're worthy of love and happiness and letting go and moving forward. and the things that you have in your life. If you have children, whatever you have, you're worthy of those things and you're going to get through it.
I love that. That resonated with me as well, because to be honest, when I was in my marriage, I had such low self-esteem.
Mm-hmm.
So I could resonate with that client you have, that I pulled it off, right? Like I got therapy and stuff like you did with your client, but you're right. You are worthy and you are loved, and you know, you can do it, right? So
Yeah,
that's very,
absolutely.
very wise.
Thanks. And she didn't become a client because I told her I would not be able to help her in any kind of neutral way because I was not neutral about her topic, her specific thing that was happening. So I was
Well,
able to refer her out and
you're an
know that she was
advocate. You were an
right.
advocate and did a good deed. That's what you did, right?
Thanks.
So, is there anything, let people know where they can get in touch with you, and any upcoming events? I know you had some stuff that you had presented somewhere. Something. Just let people know a little bit more about you.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, I presented at it was a conference. Which conference was it? Because I have another one coming up.
Well, do you
It
know the
was
one
the
that's?
ABA Reimagined.
Sorry, say it
I
again.
ABA Reimagined because I don't know if I've told your listeners this, that I was the first behavior analyst that I know of, that I've heard of in the country who started working in family law. So it's something that I try to disseminate to other behavior analysts now. And we now have one who's doing guardian ad litem work in Connecticut. I think she's in Connecticut or Delaware. And then I found one who's doing mediation now in New York. And then there's one in, I think she was in California, who just started doing guardian ad litem work. So I'm really excited about that. And maybe presenting in the Women in Behavior Analysis Conference coming up in July in Atlanta. I'm not sure about that one yet, though. I'll have to hear back from them. Just generally, locally, we'll be at the Heathrow Carnival on Friday. We'll have a booth there, and we'll have basketball and duck matching. But that's about it right now. Not a bunch of huge stuff.
Yeah, you're growing though. I've seen you. I've known you for a couple of years now, and I've seen your growth. So it's wonderful work you're doing. We'll have to have you back on for that, because and the parenting coordinating and all that, because I think that's also another very important topic, especially because you're well versed in that. So it was great having you on, Elyse, and
Thank
keep doing
you.
the great work you're doing.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you for joining today's discussion with our divorce expert. Check out the show notes for more about our guest. If you're finding value in our podcast, follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and our YouTube channel at Divorce Workshop. Share your questions, comments, or guest suggestions. We'd love to hear from you. For a comprehensive divorce guide, check out our Just Separated workbook on Amazon worldwide. This workbook covers everything from emotions and co-parenting to finances, legal insights, and recovery, a must-have for anyone navigating separation or divorce.